Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call this afternoon, particularly those of you that are calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We like to move quickly through the call, bottom line the information for you. We know you're busy people. You have other things to do. We have a standard format. We spend a few minutes talking about the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, which we continue to believe is the base currency for the reset of any of the other currencies. A few minutes talking about the program we've put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about the situation in Iraq. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of these currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of any of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information that we think is relevant. And the first relevant piece of information would be the potential window for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. And we do have a spread here. It is possible, at least 50-50, that if everything goes well over the next 30 to 60 days, we could see the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. In our view, the worst case scenario would be a backstop of January 2020. I know that's disappointing for a lot of people, but for those of us that have had currencies for several years, some over a decade, we're only talking another 5 to 6 months. So that's really good news. I really don't see rationally how they could allow the reinstitution to go beyond January of 2020, because that could theoretically push it to January of 2021, and that simply would not work out well for Iraq. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on. It's kind of complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. The first interesting piece of information would be the fact that the United Nations Security Council has visited Baghdad, and this is the first time they've set foot in country for 30 years. Now, there are a lot of geopolitical implications to this. We've discussed over the last weeks and months the fact that Iran, for its own selfish reasons, is doing everything it can to make things difficult for the government of Iraq to function independently, and, of course, for the reinstitution of their currency. A lot of speculation has been that the shenanigans from Iran is going to make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for the revaluation of the dinar to happen anytime soon. I am of the view, and this is just my opinion, that the reverse is what's actually happening, that Iran's bad behavior is actually pushing the international community to assist Iraq with the reinstitution of their currency, and that is in fact why the UN Security Council is visiting. Now, Iran, of course, is suffering from the sanctions. At this point in time, they only have two really consistent customers, Iraq for the natural gas that they need because their electrical grid is not up and running, and China that's purchasing their crude. And I think what the Security Council has figured out is the best way to resolve this issue is to assist Iraq. Of course, Iraq has petroleum. As a matter of fact, it's a sweet crude. It's better than anything that Iran could produce. So one of the reasons they're probably there is they'd like to be a customer. A lot of European countries have attempted to backdoor the U.S. sanctions against Iran in order to purchase petroleum. But the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, rebuilding of their electrical grid, rebuilding their capability for the production of petroleum will create a product that the Europeans can purchase. So, again, it seems as though Iran's bad behavior is actually assisting the international community rather to help Iraq or wean themselves away. Now, in terms of some other political issues in country, there is still no agreement on the Minister of Education. That slot still remains unfilled. I really think it's an irrelevancy. All of the other ministerial seats are filled. I think they're much more important. So obviously they'd like to get that seat filled, and they'd like confirmation of an official in that position. But again, I think it's irrelevant. I don't think it's going to have any effect at the end of the day on the reinstitution of their currency. Now, the government of Iraq still is stalemated as to whether or not to confirm Alaki, who is the current governor of the CBI, and the other special grade officials there. The Sadrists, which of course are the most influential coalition in the parliament, want to proceed with the confirmation of Alak and their proxies, not necessarily because they have 100% faith in these individuals, but they want to avoid a no-confidence vote. They do not want to go back to scratch and starting with a new government. So I think that's, in fact, what's going to happen. In addition, the implementation of the new financial management law should severely restrict some of the aberrant behavior that was exhibited by the CBI in 2012 and beyond. The CBI is an independent agency, but they still have to operate under certain regulations and guidelines. And so the Sadrists want to push forward, and rather than replace and have to vote on the confirmation of new officials, rather go ahead and confirm the sitting proxies. As a matter of fact, Parliament has extended its session for another 30 days to accommodate the confirmation of the CBI proxies and special grade officials. And given Iraq's track record, if they do not get it done within 30 days, I think that the Parliament will just give them another 30 days repetitively until they get the job done. So it seems as though that the Parliament wants all of these issues resolved. They want the reinstitution of their currency. They do not want to start all over again, and of course that's good news for us. That being the case, once again, we're looking at a very positive scenario, the possibility of the reinstitution of the dinar in the next 30 to 60 days. And in my opinion, and this is, again, my opinion, a backstop of January 2020 with the passage of the 2020 budget. That would be the optimal time, if they don't get it done by then, to go ahead and reinstitute their currency. Now, that being the case, it's conceivable that you only have another 30 to 60 days to get your affairs in order prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. And if you are the holder of these currencies, you may not understand what I mean when I say you need to get your affairs in order prior to the revaluation. To that end, Trusts Unlimited has put in place a program to assist you. It's a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a package of pre-RV asset protection trusts with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Post-RV involves all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. So let's start with Phase 1, which is, again, the establishment of a package of pre-RV asset protection trusts and the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust product. Now, there are a number of vehicles, another number of instruments that you can establish that provide some level of asset protection. For example, individuals could establish LLCs or sub-S corporations. They do provide some asset protection. They basically separate business from personal assets, but they're not going to be appropriate to protect these currencies. First, because these currencies do not represent a proper business asset. And second, many courts have ruled that if the majority of the stock of an LLC or sub-S corporation is owned by an individual or a family or a closely held group, that LLC or sub-S can be pierced for civil litigation. So that's not going to be appropriate. Some individuals have established something called a revocable trust. A revocable trust is designed primarily to exempt your estate from the cost and delay of probate, but revocable trusts can provide no privacy or asset protection, so they're not going to be appropriate. Other individuals have established irrevocable trusts, but they are individual trusts rather than package trusts. With an individual trust, all of your assets are in one trust, meaning that if any of those assets are involved in civil litigation, the other assets will necessarily get involved because they're all owned by the same entity, that one trust. The best asset protection available would be a package of irrevocable trusts, which is the package that we've established. And it's important that that package of trusts be established prior to the revaluation of these currencies, with those currencies assigned on paper to that trust package for the following reasons. First, by establishing this trust and assigning your currencies on paper to this trust package, you will preserve your privacy and your anonymity. That's because assets within this trust package are sealed, and the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this trust package, you will be able to successfully avoid personal IRS scrutiny. If you're holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will probably spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit would be time-consuming, it would be frustrating, and frankly, it would probably cost you more than the cost of our asset protection trust. On the other hand, if your trust is in place and your pre-valued currencies have been assigned to that trust, the revaluation itself, the tax implications would be transferred from you personally to the trust. Now, this is important for a couple of reasons. If the taxable event of the revaluation were to occur within this trust package, there's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit. But even if the IRS determined to audit your trust, they cannot do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on gifting currency to family and friends in certain situations. Philanthropic giving can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to gift currencies prior to their revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the USD lump sum after you have negotiated the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the USD lump sum, then you can give to them through a special gift subtrust that we have written as part of our package. Because you're gifting through this subtrust, their USD will be protected along with yours. The language of this subtrust allows you to gift up to a certain currency or currencies, meaning you can gift the exact US dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. But because you're gifting through the trust, not only will their USD be protected along with yours, but you will have direct control, meaning that you can manage, invest, and distribute the money to those individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you 2 quick scenarios. Scenario number 1, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now that estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public would be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they could simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie the estate up for years and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government will assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax, but the balance could be taxed as much as 55%. This is simply unacceptable, and it's completely avoidable. Scenario number 2, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies were valued for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that same estate of $25 million, but this time protected in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate. There will be no public disclosure of your estate. Your heirs will have immediate access to 100% of their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV asset protection trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Now, what does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. You transfer those currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have a very strong case and very deep pockets, because this trust is structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once the prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be the value of the property at the time of the transfer, $5,000, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This will protect you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This asset protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets, and this is how it would work. Once again, we'll use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. Now that you have $25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by your master trust. Now, why is this important from an asset protection standpoint? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole, and all of your other assets are safely protected in other subtrusts. Now, this is very important from an asset protection standpoint. Why are those other assets safely protected from that litigation? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal entities or persons, and the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue a separate legal entity or person. So in other words, your package of trusts work very much the way a barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these asset protection benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your package of irrevocable trusts prior to the revaluation of these currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, a holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in Phase 2, all the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation. Now, I'll just make mention of one here this afternoon. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust packages post-RV. Many of our clients have expressed a desire to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts. And the proper way to fund those entities is from the transfer of funds directly from your asset protection trust to those newly formed entities. We'll have our tax specialists there to assist you. Our offshore specialists will show you that by establishing offshore title of certain assets, you can substantially reduce and in some cases eliminate future taxes on the reinvestment of the net proceeds from the revaluation itself. We'll also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. You're going to want to reposition assets after the revaluation for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of the respective governments, but first by the confiscation of funds at the accounts at those banks. So you're going to want to get money out of the banks and at work in other markets. And third, the general global shift from fiat-based to Basel III compliant commodity-based currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets, and you're going to want a substantial amount of your net worth in tangible assets in order to avoid that volatility. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, and then your financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, one optional gift subtrust which can be converted to a standard subtrust at any time, and 8 additional standard subtrusts to hold physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with Denarian some years back, we knew that that price tag would be unaffordable for many. So by simplifying and back-end loading this package, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's not possible, we do have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. Now, with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust in place prior to the revaluation should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your credit card would be substantially less than the $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective, once again, is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in place for all of the reasons that we've discussed here. Now, I certainly hope this information has been informative, particularly for those of you calling in for the first time. We're going to go to the Q&A in a minute, but before we do, and again for our newer callers, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you may want to seriously consider allowing us to assist you. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in these areas, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have been working together for a decade in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning, and it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. In point of fact, under our system of civil litigation, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them. And invariably, it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV as we understand them. Again, I'm going to go ahead and go to the Q&A. Before I do, you may want to have a pen and paper handy because I will give our newer callers our contact information. If the things we've discussed here are of interest, I strongly suggest you get our initial informational package. You are under absolutely no obligation whatsoever by getting this package, even though it does include everything you need if you should decide to proceed and establish a trust package to protect your currencies. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A. When I do, 2 quick rules. Number 1, we take no service calls on the Q&A. This is for individuals has questions having to do with Trusts Unlimited's trust product. And for obvious reasons, your name and number must be on the screen in order to participate in the Q&A. So I'm opening up now. And again, for our newer callers, I'd like to give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD Calls and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the number that you dialed for this live call this afternoon with the exception of the last digit. Rather than dialing 4, you'll dial a 3 and then use the same access code, which is 739-394-pound. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be on our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out periodically pre-RV, but after the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, emails will certainly be going out weekly and possibly even daily. So let's go to the Q&A here. Our first caller is area code 312. That's got to be less. 312, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Jim, or good afternoon to you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for your call, taking my call, and thanks for the info. And my only question is, if the Iraqi government allows the extra 30 days for them to get things done, how and why is it that if they're supposedly are getting things done and they have attempted in the past before they even had the things done they got done last week? Because I was told that they had attempted to RV sometimes before, and the U.S. government stopped them from doing it because they needed some things that the U.S. government said should be done prior to.
Right.
Now,
well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, my question is, how is it that they're able to continue if the U.S. government says these things are already done? Why aren't they allowing it to go through? The RV,
okay, now the U.S. government's concern, they had one concern and one concern only, Iran. They were concerned about the sanctions for Iran staying in place. As I said, the only customers Iran had were Iraq for natural gas, which the United States gave them an exemption, and the Chinese that were purchasing their petroleum, and in that case the United States had no control there. And because the United States was in the process of trying to negotiate balancing the budget deficit, they weren't pushing China there. So those were the reasons then. The other issue is, even though the CBI is technically an independent agency, that's one of the reasons that Iraq had to pass the financial management law, because the CBI, while it's an independent agency, cannot operate outside of the basic rules of governance. So that's basically what happened there. They were moving a little bit prematurely. Another reason they were doing it was because Alak, the proxy governor, was concerned that he would be replaced, and so his thinking was, if I go ahead and consummate the reinstitution, I got job lock. So all of those things were addressed. I don't think at this point that the United States is going to step on the reinstitution, because, as I said, I think the meeting of the minds here is that it's better off for Iraq to go ahead and proceed. That's the best way to separate them from Iran. And now that the European nations are trying to backdoor the United States, with purchase of petroleum from Iran. I think the United States would much rather assist Iraq and then say, look, here's some oil for you. It's a better product. It's coming out of Iraq. And if necessary, we'll sell you some of our oil credits at a below market price. Just don't deal with Iran.
Okay. Well, I did see an article that said something about somebody resigned yesterday or the day before, either Monday or Tuesday. Did you hear anything about somebody resigning from an office? I'm looking for the article now.
No, I didn't, but I kind of don't pay attention to those things because it happens every day. I have to confine myself to what I really think is important because I could be on this call for 3 hours. Iraq has been an absolute soap opera, so, I just got to bottom line the information.
All right. I sent you a text yesterday. Did you see it? It had something with the text was regarding, what's the name of those people that actually do the insuring of money overseas?
You mean Lloyd's? Oh, Lloyd's of London. Yeah.
Yeah, did you see anything?
I haven't had a chance to review that. I was other occupied all day yesterday, and I frankly basically didn't get in here till this morning. And I always have to spend the early morning talking to people, in Europe and the Middle East in order to confirm anything that I say here. So I haven't had a chance to look into that, but it's on my list.
Yeah, so
when
the thing I sent
like
you...
that, I write it down on a piece of paper, the things I want to look into. I'm also got to review, even though I have a degree in economics, I'm going to have to go bone up on M1, M2, and M3 because not only are those technical issues, but Iraq seems to approach things in a very unorthodox way, and they try to kind of, cut corners and take shortcuts. So I'm trying to figure out, how they're going to get rid of the rest of the provisional currency beyond just the deletion of the zeros. They're at about 45 trillion right now, and they got to trim that a little bit. So, I've got a lot of homework to do.
So how does this thing with the Lloyd's of London affect the people that use them for insuring their currency or their funds that are over what the U.S.
Well, it's like anything else. If you're not insured, it makes the currency much more risky. It devalues the currency. It's like anything else. The more risk you take, the less value you have because you've got to subtract from the upside the potential for loss. Right.
But if the Lloyd's of London is, and what I sent you was a copy of what they sent me, and it was a claim form for me to fill out and send over to join this mass lawsuit thing that they got going against them for something. I don't know. How could they have cheated people?
Well,
what is it that they could do to cheat people?
Well, that's the problem. Let's assume that someone was selling you and I counterfeit currency. All right.
Okay.
Well, it's like anything else. If the purveyor of the counterfeit currency is worth $100,000 and their claims are $10 million, then you and I are getting a penny.
Okay.
In
all
restitution.
Right.
So that's the situation there. But without reading the article, which I haven't had a chance to do, I can't specifically discuss. I will tell you this: Lloyd's of London has taken a couple of hits over the last 10 years. So, I'll just have to check it out and see what's going on.
So will you use them in the future if necessary, or will you go somewhere else?
Well,
if so, who would you go?
First I have to determine if it's something that I think is an insurable interest. If it is, then I've got to consider my options. But again, without knowing specifically what the article's dealing with, I really don't know how to respond to you.
Well, I was just hoping you could respond in terms of them having a class action suit. What could they actually be doing where the people are having a class action suit, and who would you pursue as future insurers of your funds if they are underwater?
I don't know.
Okay.
All I know is whenever I hear class action suit, this is my bottom line for class action suit: pennies on the dollar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the result. That's all I care about. What's the result of a class action? Pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, but even outside of that, why are they being sued? They're insuring funds. Why do they have a class action?
I don't know. I haven't seen the article. I have to read the article.
Yeah.
I can't respond to you. I haven't seen the article. But I will check it out.
Thanks, Jim.
Yes,
Have
sir.
a good weekend, and enjoy your holiday tomorrow.
You too. You too, my friend.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, our next caller is area code 931. That's 931. Let me guess that's Manuel.
Hey, Jim, how are you, sir?
Okay, what can I do for you, my friend?
Well, first of all, happy holiday, 4th of July.
Thank you, sir. Same to
let's
you.
all stand up to the flag and salute it, because I'm a veteran, and I'm sure there's a lot of veterans on the call, and we'll listen to this, but we got to stand up for our flag and our freedom. But also, I wanted to ask you a question. Since first of all, thank you for the wonderful trust that you and the professor have put out, and being that it's segregated into different trusts, if you will, under one master trust. My question is that when you do get a trust, for example, for an automobile or a home or an RV, will they have to go under different identities, even though it's under the master trust? And
let's take an example.
Different Social Security numbers to open up those trusts.
No, I'll give you an example. Okay, now, you have a master trust, and you get an EIN number for that trust. The only other trust within the package that would have an EIN number would be the gift subtrust, because those are the only two trusts that handle financial assets. And under the gift subtrust, you would be the trustee because you're not the beneficiary. Now, the other subtrusts operate, the ones that hold physical assets, operate under the EIN number of the master trust. So let's say, for example, the RV happened. You called us 2 months later and said, we're purchasing a $2.5 million beach house at I'm just going to make up a name, on the Wexford Beach. We want to establish the Wexford Real Estate Subtrust. So we write that subtrust for you. You go to your closing. When you go to the closing, they will name the Wexford Real Estate Subtrust as the official owner of that home, and you will be the beneficiary. The only cost to you would be somewhere between $100 and $150, which would be the paralegal fee to actually write and fund that subtrust. And that's the basic process for all of the physical assets that you subsequently want to protect through a subtrust.
Okay. So if whatever that what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever that asset should be, whether it be a automobile trust, an RV trust, if and when you put it into that trust, whenever you get ready to sell, if that is the case, sell that product, or when you put it into the trust, will the trustee have to sign over the title when you sell
what
the product?
will happen is, let's say you want to sell that home we just discussed. When you go to closing, you will go with the title to the home, and it's titled to the trust. You and the trustee will just sign as the seller, and it will go to the individual. Now, the trustee can do nothing without your knowledge and consent, and the trustee would have if you go to the trustee and say, I want to purchase this house or I want to sell this house, the trustee would have no reason to deny you're doing that. It's legal, it's not immoral, it's not unethical. It's a proper duty of a trustee. Now, let's say you had a trustee that decided for whatever reason that they thought that their input was critical. And by the way, with our trust product, one of the reasons we utilize the Wyoming provisions is the trustee will sign a document naming you as their advisor, meaning they will rely on your determination. If a trustee for any reason is uncomfortable, they can always resign. And if you are uncomfortable with that trustee for any reason, you can replace them at any time for any reason. So inasmuch as you control the terms of the trust and you control who's the trustee, you have indirect control at all times. But in order to have asset protection, there has to be a trade-off, and the trade-off is it has to be owned by a third entity like a trust. And in order to have that asset protection, it's got to be an irrevocable trust. And in order to be an irrevocable trust, you have to work with a third-party trustee.
So when you go buy an RV, for example, the trustee has to go with you to get the paperwork, and he has to sign in the behalf of the trust?
Yeah, the paperwork would say, let's say you were purchasing an RV and you called it the Around the World RV,
right.
or the Around the World Subtrust.
Right.
That would own the RV, and it would say who the trustee is and who the beneficiary is. So Joe Smith is the trustee, and Manny is the settler/beneficiary.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, why would a trustee make it difficult? There'd be no reason for it.
Right. Okay, Jim, I do appreciate it, and you and your family and the professor and their family all have a happy 4th of July.
Thank you, sir. One other thing I want to mention. We've probably done over 5,000 trusts, and I can honestly say I can count on one hand the number of times where a trustee and a settler didn't know how to handle a situation, and each and every time it was simply handled with a phone call. We just got on a conference call. They asked their questions. We answered their questions. They said, okay, we got it.
Okay. Sounds wonderful. Thank you for your answers.
Happy
Bye-bye.
4th. Thank you for your service, sir. Okay, Manny was our last caller for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to the call. Our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So have a great week, everyone, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.